Professor, good to have you here with us on TRT World. What do you make of this new report about mass graves?
I mean, it's hardly surprising. We have turmoil, especially in West Darfur, since February, basically. And I mean, this is a bit, it's almost cynical to say if this conflict could spiral into a full-blown civil war, because in Darfur it already has. What happened there was, if you remember, like in June, the governor was basically killed. He was from the Maasai tribe. Basically, all the people in the mass graves are probably, as far as we know, also from the Maasai, and they have been hunted down by Arab militias. Part of them RSF affiliated, part of them might even be in parts of the RSF directly. We don't know exactly. The informations are a bit scarce in that sense, but what we have to take into account, this is the result of a longer-term conflict that reaches back to the initial Darfur war, where the regime in Khartoum, and at that time the army, basically recruited all these Arab militias to basically hunt what they perceived as non-Arab tribes. The RSF is the biggest of them, but there's quite a lot of others, and it's these militias that committed these crimes.
Do you think this latest report would perhaps have some sort of influence on the international community to do something more about resolving the conflict in Sudan? Do you think this would serve as a wake-up call?
I mean, the wake-up call is kind of there. The problem is what to do. I mean, as we've heard before, the UN is in a very bad state. It might get, I'm kind of inclined to think it might get better with Volker Perthes removed, because he was just completely incapable to deal with the issue. And the problem is that, as it looks like, the dominant approach is still what the US and Saudi Arabia do as a tandem to get these two generals, basically Hemeti and Burhan, together to sign whatever kind of deal. The wake-up call should be, I guess, here, that there is no tangible or any durable solution with these two still in place and these two being protagonists of any kind of deal. So I think if there is a wake-up call here, it is to broaden negotiations, bring more people in, and kind of, in a way, to provincialize these two generals and take their dominant political role away, at least when it comes to internationally facilitated negotiations.
Right, and Jan, correct me if I'm wrong. One of the reasons why these two sides are not able to negotiate anything is because there's no consensus. They're not agreeing. They're not making any sorts of concessions. So if negotiations are going to take place, concessions have to be made by both sides. What are those concessions?
I mean, this is basically the conundrum where we are. I mean, these negotiations, especially between these two, they have happened before. They were actually the trigger of all this, of the current situation of the war. And essentially, the army still demands, okay, RSF, whatever, they should be dismantled and should become part of the army. The RSF said, okay, yeah, we are willing to even to integrate ourselves in the army, but not with the current leadership. So basically, implicitly saying taking over the leadership of the army. There's hardly any compromise. So this is the problem. I guess the only chance is here to provide a strong civilian alternative, to work with political forces that are actually there, many of them now outside the country, but give them a platform to be strong enough in these negotiations to basically bring RSF and the Sudanese armed forces in a role that is not that politically dominant anymore. I don't see in the current situation, let's put it that way, bringing RSF and Sudanese armed forces together in any kind of compromise negotiated framework. I don't see this coming. It needs to be other forces and other factors at play in negotiations.
Fascinating insights into the topic. Jan Pospisil, thank you very much for talking to us here on TRT World.